Myers is ready. We're going to go ahead and get started. Very happy to have Leslie Myers back in the room. In the house. And Dr. Brown, anything before we get started? Other than right, ready to go and ready for the evening, and we're going to go ahead with this is really a budget workshop that turned into a special voting meeting. We do have some items of business and propositions that we have to go through. We will do that after we do a public comment period regarding whatever is on anyone's mind. And so Josh is going to go ahead and read the names off. We're in a smaller room, so basically go one by one is fine, and have a couple of minutes to tell us what's on your mind, and we'll it's not a dialogue, it's a chance for you to talk to us, and then we'll have a budget discussion after we get through our propositions that we have to get through. And Josh, go ahead.
All right, and I've got a timer here so you'll hear it go off and you should finish your thought. So first on the list is Bonnie Williams.
Where do I go?
That's right there.
Okay, I want to kind of pull this up for everyone. I have been mother, I'm now grandmother and great-grandmother to these children. The big picture is my granddaughter, Rosario Williams. She is Beverly J. Martin's grandniece, and she is attending Beverly J. Martin. So, a little bit of history there. And the rest are my other grandchildren and one great-granddaughter, who's at Beverly. I have been a supporter of that school more than 40 years, when it was central, when it was threatened by East Hill, when it was threatened by a lot of things. We merged, we did well, we've always been together, and I'm still not tired. I will be here for whatever BJ needs. And I don't know, I'm 65, I get a little flustered, I'm trying to stay focused, but here we go. Okay. What impressed me, one of the things that impressed me was one day on BJ when I read the sign, Roots to Grow and Wings to Fly, and that says Beverly J. Martin. And Beverly was a friend of mine and a next door neighbor. And the woman had beautiful ideas for children. And now some scary things to me are starting to happen. I mean, there are other phrases like, remember, no child left behind. Gee, that sounded so good. No child should ever left behind. Little did we know that the Bush administration defined child as an older, balding, rich white man. So they didn't get left behind, but quite a few children did. And that's why I'm saying these phrases aren't always good things, especially the newer ones. And P.J. Martin has always worked, and now it seems like maybe there's a little bit of a new thing coming through that's maybe I could say it's close to bonsai. You know, you take the tree and you stunt the roots and you trim the growth. Works great on a nice little tree. Beautiful hobby. It doesn't work well with our children. You stunt the roots by taking away the team that works for them and helps them to grow. And you trim the growth by putting 18 children in a room meant for 14 with 3 people, making it maybe 18 with 2 people. That's no longer a learning environment. That's an unsafe room that's doing custodial care for a group of children that deserve far better. Far better. And it's like, I thought, if I compared my school to sports, everybody likes sports, I suppose. And if I ran the Yankees, or in my case, the Dallas Cowboys, or maybe the New York Knicks, and we had a winning year, and BJ Pre-K has had many winning years. These two had one last year, and they came through BJ. This one loves math, and the first day after school was out, she was at my house. Okay, well, okay. But if you had a winning team, like those sports teams, you would not one day wake up and say, I'm going to take out all of the winning players, all of the winning coaches, and replace them, cut them back, and we'll put all new people in and we'll just see what we do. Now, it wouldn't make sense for that. It doesn't make sense to break down these teams. And I want to say thank you to you. And if Ms. Patel was here and Ms. Peggy was here, thank you to them. We don't do that enough. We owe them a thank you every day. If you can remember when you leave your child's room, say thank you, because these people love our children and do well. BJM is a family, and when a family has problems, be they budget, be they scheduling, you don't throw out the baby. And pre-K is our baby, and BJM does a great job with our babies. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Rako? Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Rako. I'm here on behalf of the youngest children in the school district, the children in our early childhood programs. As a former pre-K teacher in the Ithaca City School District, I read the budget report and was distressed to see pre-K drastically cut on all 3 tiers. I want you to know that I understand what a difficult job you have as caretakers for our district, and I want you to know why I believe cuts to our early childhood program will have a long-lasting negative result. All the cuts to pre-K are devastating, but tonight I want to focus on the 9 pre-K aides, ESPs, that are slated to be cut on tier 2. Learning for all 3-year and 4-year-olds in all areas of development depends on the relationship with an adult. It's how young children learn. The Ithaca City School District has long stood as a shining example in New York State for its quality early childhood program. One of the reasons for this is the ratio of adults to children in our classrooms. We're able to offer a high degree of instruction to our children because there are more adults available to lead and guide them. If we increase that ratio, we reduce the quality of the instruction that we provide. Safety becomes an issue, conflicts go unsettled, concepts are not reinforced, learning opportunities are lost, goals are unmet, quality is gone. And this is our most vulnerable population. This is an equity issue. The children in our pre-K programs are our neediest. To meet the high standards of this district and state, as well as the strong curriculum, our youngest children need relationships to get off to a strong beginning. Pre-K provides a giant step toward promoting equal footing for our children entering kindergarten. And for this to happen, we need more hands and hearts, not less. Let's not shortchange the children who need us the most. I'm asking you to please preserve as much of the funding to pre-K that you possibly can. It will pay off in the long run. I know because I've seen it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Siegel and Daria Siegel.
Hi. Hello. I'm Nancy Siegel. I'm a teacher at Beverly Martin School in the pre-K program. They are the typical ed class.
And I'm Daria Siegel. I'm a special education pre-K teacher.
Okay. We're here just to represent the pre-K program. If some of the can you hear me?
No.
Okay, I'm trying. I really was looking forward to that microphone. If some of the proposed adjustments occur to the Ithaca School District's pre-K program, we have several major concerns. We are concerned about students' equitable access to curriculum and opportunities for enrichment and remediations. Research shows that 85% of a person's intellect, personality, and social skills are developed before the age of 5. We cannot compromise this critical window of opportunity. You have all received, board members of Dr. Brown, a copy of the article from the American Educator Spring Edition entitled The Economics of Inequality, the Value of Early Childhood Education. And here's a quote from that article. The evidence is quite clear that inequality in the development of human capabilities produces negative social and economic outcomes that can and should be prevented with investments in early childhood education, particularly targeted toward disadvantaged children and their families. This is exactly what our program does currently. We are especially concerned about the 8:2 ratio that is proposed in the Tier 2 cuts. We have concerns that this 18:2 ratio does not leave us with the resources sufficient to meet the New York State standards set for pre-K. We also have safety concerns.
We'd like to give you a picture of a pre-K classroom. The children we teach are young enough for their ages to be measured in months. They're in the 48-month-old age range. These students are developing their language skills, and sometimes they cry when they're upset instead of speaking. That's it. Okay.
There's 2 of you can go. Finish your thoughts.
They need adult support to develop their language skills. They're developing their fine motor skills.
When they come to pre-K in the fall, they often need adult support to draw a picture that resembles an object. These students are also developing their self-help skills. They sometimes need an adult support to know how to stay on the playground and not wander off, or to walk in the line, or to learn to wash their hands, or to sit independently at a table to eat lunch or breakfast. Pre-K regulations state that we're out of compliance if a child's not with an adult at all times. An adult may be out of the room for reasons such as these: taking a child to the bathroom or to the nurse, or this happens every day, getting lunch and breakfast. Head Start states that meals have to be eaten family style in the classroom. So somebody has to leave the classroom to prepare the meals and bring them back. On top of that, teachers and ESPs are entitled to a 30-minute lunch break. So these are all times that our district's very youngest students will be left with a 17 or 18-to-1 ratio. So clearly there are safety concerns and also academic concerns when it comes to the needs of the children. Just to wrap up, we'd like to read you some of the New York State standards for pre-K. Here's one. Child clusters letters to form word phrases and sentences. Here's another one. With prompting and support, use a combination of drawing, dictating, or writing to compose informative, explanatory texts in which they name what they're writing and supply some information about the topic. We can't have a 17 or 18-1 ratio to do that. This is just the last page. It's really short.
Please help us maintain our current level of staffing, which is safe and supportive of our children. We would like to invite Dr. Brown and the board to attend our next curriculum committee meeting, which will be April 4th at 2:45 at BJM. We'll get a copy of this to the board so that we have that information.
And here's the American Educator article. Pass it up.
Lauren Iacona, no, pardon me, Nicole Marshman. Sorry, I skipped around.
Pardon me, I'm a little nervous. It's my first time ever doing anything like this. I'm here to represent all of the low-income families in Tompkins County, the parents that can't afford a babysitter to get here tonight or don't have a car. These are the families we're serving in our pre-K program right now. The Head Start program was, the initial initiative was to serve the low-income families and provide the same level of education, at least at the beginning, for everybody to start off on as a foundation. I am a mother of a 5-year-old and 16-year-old. Both of them have been blessed with pre-K. At 3, my son, I was 19 years old, so he was in pre-K at 3 out of necessity for affordable childcare. My daughter, who's 5 now, loved school so much she couldn't wait to get in at 3. So, as you can see, it's served me for different reasons over time. I think if we stop giving care to our 3-year-olds, you'll see a lot of children in the hands of caregivers that aren't appropriate. For a lot of these children, this is the only meal they get in the day, the only books they get in a day, the only real one-on-one attention they get in a day. The coworker relationships that happen in these pre-K programs, a lot of these people have been working here for years, serving our children. And the coworker relationships, like she was saying about the teamwork, why would you want to break up teams that work so well together, that serve our children so well? We live in Ithaca and we're blessed that we have 2 universities here. And I can't believe with all these educated adults we can't come with other solutions other than building our budget on the backs of our children, our most precious resource. I'm sorry, I'm so emotional and scared. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Lauren Iacona, Garrett, and Maroney.
My name is Kasha Maroney. I'll be presenting. I wish I had 20 minutes, but we only have 2, so I'll make this as quickly as as quick as that. We, the 3 of us, represent an ever-increasing group of parents and teachers and school staff and community members who are strongly opposed to the 50% reduction in Caroline Elementary School's social worker position. We understand that you as a board need to make adjustments and that the decisions are difficult ones, but we urge you to reconsider our need for this position. Today, a small group of 8 of us parents met with Dr. Brown and Ms. McHenry and Ms. Rasco-Strabel and our principal, Tim McDonald, and we described the large resource gap that's left by the cut for our social work position and how the remaining resources at Caroline simply can't fill that gap. Our psychologist at Caroline has already been reduced, and our remaining full-time social worker is solely attached to the district elementary transition program, the ETPP program, which services high-needs, emotionally disabled students from across the district, leaving no time for that position to help the remaining 300-plus students in our school. It may appear on paper that our building has 2 full-time social workers, but the ETP social worker should not be considered a Caroline resource. We are particularly concerned about the ability of the RTI process to meet the children's needs without a dedicated social worker for Caroline. Ms. McHenry states that the RTI is responsible for reducing special education classification, and many parents in our school are putting faith in the RTI because of the unique skills and ongoing support the social workers provide in that process, which we definitely see as a work in progress that needs all of its current resources, and most especially our social worker. At our meeting this morning, we described serious issues that will result from this cut and described how all 5 of this Board of Education's priorities will be undermined by this cut. Our concerns include the repercussions for children, families, and teachers when students in need are serviced by any one of 4 or more individuals who may happen to be available at the time of that need, and how greatly inefficient that use of a resource is. I'll be quick, I only have a couple more points to make. We're concerned about the implied decreases in resources for the ETP program itself and the fallout for those students as well as the rest of the population if that social worker is called upon to deal with children who are not in that program. We're concerned about a lack of time for critical communication with families. We're concerned about the implications that our school's resources will focus almost exclusively on crisis intervention versus ongoing case management prevention. We'd like to present the board with a report, which we have a copy for each of you, that details the concerns that we discussed in our meeting this morning, as well as a petition signed by more than 120 concerned citizens in Caroline. We urge you as a board to investigate further the high needs of our school population and to reconsider this proposed cut. I don't have nearly enough time to say the rest of what I'd like to say, so we're going to hand out petitions and letters and the report from our meeting this morning. We urge you to have a long look at it and consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have parent letters here as well.
And next up is Alan Lambert. I'm Alan Lambert, and I first spoke to the Ithaca School Board 31 years ago. And I've been watching ever since and commenting. There are 2 brief points I'd like to make. The first one, on the pilot consent resolution. When I was on the board, I made the following 2 arguments. First, that you vote by abstention. That the board not take a position on a controversial political matter involving taxes in which people can be offended, have to vote on school budget and can be offended one way or the other. In the given condition that you're required to vote, I urge you to vote no because there's substantial research, a large preponderance of research that shows these kind of community subsidized projects end up losing money for the taxing agencies. Ithaca doesn't need more big boxes. We're going to have empty buildings, and so I urge you to vote no. The second point is about the budget. I was concerned to see this budget discussion item that says budget adoption document. I was shocked last week to see a member of the board actually move to adopt the budget before a budget had even been presented to the public, before a document with its detail is out, before the public had had any opportunity to speak, and when the board had already officially established a date for its vote. In my 30-some-odd years watching the Ithaca School Board, I have never seen a board so unengaged and so tardy in getting to any substantive issues on the budget. No discussion yet of principles, hardly any discussion of anything, no consideration, for example, of just what we can support. A 3% spending increase when we're losing students. We're down to 5,000 students. When I first was elected in '93, we had 6,200 students. And 15 years ago, we had a $9,600 per pupil spending. This year is $20,000. We can get by with a zero increase.
Next up is Jean McFeeters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jean McFeeters. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to speak about the Arrowhead PIF and ask that the board support it. I think it's really important that this be supported by the board. If the board does not support this, this venture will fail. And this is an opportunity for this community as this entire county to gain about $700,000 a year in sales taxes. Now that doesn't support the school district, but it supports all of us by having lower sales taxes, lower property taxes, excuse me. Sales taxes make up about 40% of the county's budget. So I think it's really critical for that. It's also likely to create about 78 new jobs, about 24 of them management level jobs. And I think we need new jobs in this community. The other really important thing here is that the proposed BJs and the housing that's built will pay their full taxes. It's just that the taxes will go towards increment financing of this rather than to directly over the next 15 years come to the school district or the county. This is critical. When I hear people here this evening talking about proposed cuts in the budget, here's an opportunity to create something. We need to make our pies bigger. And this is one way that we can make that pie bigger. Thank you for your consideration.
Martha Robinson.
Hi, I'm Martha Robinson, Chair of the County Legislature and also Chair of the IDA, the Industrial Development Agency. I wanted to also mention Leslie McBean-Claiborne, one of our other legislators, really wanted to be here, but she's at a meeting at GAC tonight. And we have a couple of other legislators to speak about the Arrowhead project, the PIF, that's on your agenda. I have talked to, I think I've talked to almost all of you, and many more than once, and I really do urge you to vote to support this and to support it as presented to you tonight. We absolutely, as Jean said, we absolutely need the sales tax and the property tax, and the school district will see increased tax from this project. I wanted to mention one thing about the process. There was a quote in the paper about the last board meeting, and I don't know if it was a misquote or whatever, but the IDA bylaws on our website indicate that the IDA shall have a certain membership profile, and it was pointed out that that's not what we actually have. There's an asterisk on that, on that clause in the bylaws, and then down at the bottom of the page, it points out that the legislature, which governs and sets up the IDA, and then has to approve the bylaws. It was the legislature that voted to keep the membership on the IDA at 4 legislators, 2 at-large members, and 1 TCAD board member. The IDA itself had voted to include a school board member on the IDA, but that had to be approved by the full legislature, and it was turned down. I was one of a small number that voted to bring the school board member on, as well as an elected municipal official. We have a change in membership with the new election in the meantime, and I think with this whole discussion, I hope a change in attitude, and I plan to bring that conversation back to the legislature and hope that we can get a different outcome so that one of the school districts in Tompkins County will be present in a formal way on the IDA board. So I really do hope that you'll support this project. It really will bring something to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Dennis.
Excuse me, thank you very much. My name is Jim Dennis, and I represent Ulysses Enfield. And actually, a good deal of my district is also in the Ithaca City School District. I'm a former teacher. I chair the Budget Committee of the County Legislature. What I'm here about, I heard some interesting things being said about a need for revenue. If you approve this agreement, you will improve your revenues by $1.3 million over 15 years. If you do not approve this agreement, what you're really looking at is a flat number of about $17,000 to $18,000 a year on a piece of land that would be undeveloped, and that might go up 2% a year during this time. The overall amount of money that the district could accumulate during that time is roughly 1.3 mil that you don't have now. And as it is, every tax dollar that's spent in the district or obtained in the district, 62% roughly goes to the school district, 25% goes to us, and a much smaller percentage goes to the village and town. So I'm asking you to approve this measure. I think it will improve your revenue stream, and it will certainly add some jobs to the community, which is desperately needed. I think we're at a 6.6 unemployment rate, which is the highest I've ever seen in Tompkins County, and I've lived here 35 years. And you know, we need your support. I think the community needs your support for this project. And please vote in the affirmative if you can see your way clear.
Thank you. Frank Proto.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. Some of you I've spoken to personally on the phone in the last couple of days. I'm a member of the county legislature. I won't tell you how many years I've served on that board, but I don't envy you as members of the school board, because some of us go through the same aggravation that you go through. I'm elected from the towns of Caroline, Danby, and the town of Ithaca. I represent I'm elected from principally a rural constituency where the taxes are just as high as any place else. And I'm here to speak in support of the Arrowsmith project. I can't endorse and emphasize more than what you've already heard from my colleagues on the legislature about the importance of the taxing situation. You don't need to hear any more about that. I chair the Health and Human Services Committee for the county board. I'm here to talk to you about jobs. We have a number of people, as Jim has already mentioned. It's a 6.6% unemployment rate in this county. The people in my district, the people in the city of Ithaca, the people in your school district are hurting badly. And a lot of the jobs, the 70 to 80 jobs that will be provided here, plus the management positions, will go a long way towards helping get these people back on their feet. And I can't say that enough. My budget, or the county's budget, and the share that goes through my committee is about 2/3 of the county's budget. We have all the human service agencies, all the human service departments, mental health, health department, youth, and I can go on, you don't need to hear it all. And some of you in this room are my constituents, and I owe Tim an apology. I was supposed to go read at the Ag and Farmland Protection Board meeting for him, and I was at another meeting, Tim, sorry. But I certainly would endorse and encourage your support for this project. It's very, very much needed. And I know that Martha's already mentioned this. Several of us are certainly willing, and I've spoken to some of you already about the other issues that surround the school board's concerns about representation on the IDA. And I know that some of us are very much in concert with what Martha has already mentioned about that membership. If there are any questions that any one of us can answer, I'm sure we'll stick around for that. But thank you for your concerns and your interest, and thank you for keeping such good time. You're welcome, by the way, to any one of our county legislative meetings. We have exciting ones too.
Joe Mariani.
Thank you very much. My name is Joe Mariana. I'm the Tompkins County Administrator. I'm going to consult on my prepared remarks, and I'll leave a copy with the board when I leave.
Joe, just for your information, we're observing a 2-minute time limit.
I'll read very quickly then. You know that the legislature, you've heard from the legislature, they've approved the pilot plan several months ago. That plan has actually been improved through negotiations over the past couple of months. The legislature's support for this plan and mine relates it to two things: jobs and taxes. First, to jobs. The county's unemployment rate, you probably heard, stands at an almost unheard of level of 6.6%. That's almost double the rate that it was during a comparable period before the economy collapsed in 2008. I don't think anyone would argue that we need to create employment opportunities at every rung of the career ladder. This project will create an estimated 70 new jobs, many of which are in supervision and management. That number is important to all of us, but it's especially important to the 3,200 people in this county who are looking for work and not finding it. Second, to taxes. We're looking at the project from two perspectives as they relate to property taxes. First, as a way to stabilize the county's third largest taxpayer. That's what the mall is, the third largest taxpayer in Tompkins County. Over the past year, the mall paid about $1.3 million in property taxes, and about $850,000 of that went to the school district. Anyone who has been through the mall, who's walked the mall, who's seen the store closing signs in front of Borders, knows that we need to be concerned about the stability of that dependable source of revenue for the school district and local governments. And what's the best way to foster stability of the mall? Certainly the best way is to increase its draw by bringing new tenants that shoppers will want to visit. According to the experts, BJ's will do that. People will come here to shop and stay there at the mall while they're in that location. So supporting this project will first of all stabilize an important property tax generating asset. It'll also result in the growth of taxes. Under the agreement, taxes to the district, as you've heard, will double in the first year, with the district receiving about $36,000. And over the next 15 years, the difference in tax yield will be about $1 million. That's a meaningful increase in revenue at a time that we all need it. Lastly, in this point, this is revenue that's generated without any associated cost to the district. It's clean revenue to the district over that period of time. The county will benefit also at a time that we need it also to pay for increases in our mandated costs. So I ask the board to consider this project on its merits, especially in terms of the jobs it will create and the property taxes it will generate. Thank you.
Nate Shinagawa.
Sorry, I'm getting over a cold right now. My name is Nate Shinagawa. I'm a Tompkins County legislator representing the 4th District. And I'm also a member of the Budget Committee and the Health and Human Services Committee on the legislature and a member of the Industrial Development Agency. I'm here to talk in favor of the Arrowhead project. And my reason for it is not because I want another big box store in Ithaca. In fact, if you look at my record, I've been very much against big box stores, especially in areas where there haven't been infrastructure development and there's a heavy taxpayer burden in developing that infrastructure. This project's different though. It's in an area where the infrastructure is already developed. And the money that's being used, the BJ's is paying its full amount of property taxes, but we're using that property tax to finance the senior housing project and the rehabilitation of wetlands, which is part of the Town of Lansing's comprehensive plan. And so I think that's a very unique, very different project, and that's why I'm in support of it. But the big reason why I'm in support of it is because almost a year ago today, I was in about, how many, at least a dozen county budget meetings, 3 or 4 hours long each. And the primary topic of discussion was over $400,000 in cuts to foster care programs, intermunicipal youth programs, and programs for at-risk children. And that's what was on the table to be cut by the county, $400,000 right there. This project has the potential to generate up to $700,000 for the county in sales tax. Even minimum estimates show that it's about $400,000, and that's from looking at third-party analysis too. So I'm supportive of this project primarily because I think that there are critical human services that we need to fund in Tompkins County, and we need revenue in order to do that. Otherwise, we just end up increasing property taxes, and that's not good for everybody because it's difficult for many. We really need to expand the tax base, not the tax burden. Please support this project. Finally, also, I wanted to say that Martha had brought up how the legislature did not voted down including an additional member, a member of the school board to the IDA. I was actually one of the people that voted against it, not because I didn't want a school board member, but I was afraid that the county legislature would lose part of its voice. I've hence been educated about this issue, and I wasn't on the IDA, so I wanted to publicly state that if this vote comes up again, I will be in support of adding a school board member to the Industrial Development Agency's board. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Eric Getz.
My name is Eric Getz, and I'm the applicant for the Arrowhead Ventures. I have a lot of things I wanted to bring up tonight. A lot of them have been addressed, so I'll just keep it short and simple. I've spent 3 years assembling what I consider a quality project for this community. I'm here this evening to ask for your support for our project. I know there's a number of stakeholders at the table here. It may not be everything that the Ithaca City School Board District would like to see, but the benefits are significant to the community and the school district. I'm a small company, and I'm a small company that can make a major impact in this community in the next 12 months. Now, I'm asking for the opportunity to do that. Now, my project can generate 150 high-paying construction jobs in the next year. My project could generate 70-plus jobs in the community working at DJs. My project could generate 12 senior housing units, which create no further burden on the school district because the age limit is set for 55 and older. You know, my project, as Joe said, could generate an additional $1 million over what you received today during the term of what we're talking about here. So it is a significant project. You know, I am asking this evening for your vote. I'm asking you for your support. I'm asking you to support this project based on the merits to the benefits of this community. You know, please give me the opportunity to make this impact. Give me the opportunity to bring these jobs. Give me the opportunity to build this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last person that signed up. Anyone that wants to speak that is not an elected representative from any of the various and this is an opportunity to speak to the budget. That's really what this is all about. And please go ahead and state your name, please.
As I look around tonight, I am one of the only aides here from the Ithaca Pre-K. I have been with the program for 4 years. As you see, this is what I wear on a daily basis. You cannot see the sneakers on my feet, which is needed every day I walk into that classroom because we're constantly on the run. Okay, my position this year, I'm a one-on-one aide for a very highly medical child in the classroom. But it is often, even with 2 other aides in the room and the head teacher, that my eyes are constantly on the 17 children in the room. I'm just saying that this cut of putting one TA or one teacher aide in the room with 18 4-year-olds, you're asking for trouble. The safety, we can't even start to tell you what the safety reasons will be. You have playground here to get these children off the buses, their breakfast, their lunch. Somebody's constantly out of the room. I just don't know how it's going to be figured that it's going to be done. The other thing that's been brought to our attention that it's going to be TAs over teacher aides. I am 30 years childcare. Yes, I'm going for my TA. I ask myself why. Is it job security at this point? I don't believe it is. You know, what can a TA do, 1-year TA with no early childhood training like I have, that I can't do after 30 years of working with young children under the age of 5. I'm asking you, please, there's just no way these classrooms are going to run with 18 children, 4-year-olds at that, with 1 person in the room and 1 teacher. I mean, you're going to ask TAs to do job duties that teacher aides do, and I don't think that's going to also work through. And I don't understand what a TA can do that the teacher aides that we're trained to.
Name?
I'm sorry, your name?
It's Lorraine Hamilton. I'm also the VP for the union for the paraprofessionals.
Thanks, Lorraine.
Thanks, Lorraine.
Any other staff at this time? Okay, thanks everyone. We will go on to school district business, and by some freak chance, a pilot diversion consent resolution seems to be the first item of business. And as long as this PIF is on our agenda, we will never be lonely, Dr. Brown. So this resolution was vetted and created by our attorneys, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I'll entertain motions.
So moved. Does it need to be moved?
Yes. Second by Josh. Discussion. We've certainly heard comments? Go ahead, Josh.
Neither am I a fan of big box stores. I think it's a business model that's dying. But as one of my colleagues on the board pointed out, although one can easily get books on the internet and one can easily get electronics on the internet, it's pretty hard to buy toilet paper on the internet. And see if there's a place for big box, this is probably it. I wish to God they changed their name. But no, really the substantive point to me is, wouldn't you be happier having us at the table when this whole project comes together, rather than having to come on bended knee now at the last minute? I really hope that the legislature understands that, in fact, coalitional power is better than having your own power, that you're a lot stronger when you've got allies and friends amongst your other municipal organizations than when you're working alone like that and holding it all yourselves.
G-Max?
One of you said that the bookstore is going out, and yet I didn't hear of any suggestion that BJ's moves into that area. So we are basically going to have a huge area at the mall that's not used. I had heard also that Best Buy was having trouble. And so if that occurs, that's another huge area vacant. I'm concerned about that. And the other thing, if you had said to me that you were going to be putting back money into the Youth Bureau budget, I would have immediately been on your side. But I haven't heard anything about what you're going to do with the increased sales tax. And we're the only ones that get nothing. The Youth Bureau needs to be told that it needs money, that it can have money. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard anything about the increased sales tax.
Albert, go back. Do you want to go ahead over it, or Martha was going to?
I may recapture some of what Judy just said. I'm going to say it a little differently, maybe incorporate some of what Josh said as well. I think you guys are appropriate when you tell us that if you have made the decision that this might be the best way to move forward with that space economically for this county, then we should have the appropriate deference. What I'm concerned about is how I can be sure just as clearly that this is the best deal that could have been negotiated for this school district and for the children of this school. And I've spoken to quite a few people in the last few days, and no one has been able to make it clear to me that this is the best deal. Nathan, you said it very eloquently that there were some creative uses of directed funds specifically for a creative project. I didn't have that opportunity. Our responsibility around this table is for the young people who are in our buildings to make sure we negotiate what's in their best interest. And none of you have been able to prove to me that this is the best deal. When you say to us, you are going to benefit from day one, be happy. I find myself thinking about the position that another fine institution is in this town, where powers that be made the decision they were going to do something to that group and told them, mark my words, in 20 years you'll be happy. And one of your legislative members is at a meeting about that right now. So I hope you are hearing from us that this body we are seasoned. We think we can negotiate fine financial deals. We take this work seriously, and we collectively have expressed, at least amongst each other, that there are some parts of this and the way it went down and some of the benefits that particular groups are getting that make us really, really mad.
Martha, did you want to respond to Judy, or?
Well, I would be happy to wait till any other members have to speak.
Jay, do you want to speak?
I'm in full support of approving it. I am supporting it for the same reasons that have been mentioned by our chamber president and by our county board legislators. I think that we may be unhappy with the process that happened, but we've been told, I have no reason to not believe it, that if we don't approve this tonight, it won't happen. So I think you should feel, I don't think it's inaccurate to say that if you vote against this, from what we've been led to believe, you will be stopping the project. And all the good that can come from it, all the jobs, all the tax revenues that come to the district and that come to the county and the village. You'll be stopping the 12 units, senior housing. You'll be stopping the improvement of the wetlands and the land there. It's not our job to pick winners and losers as far as big boxes and small boxes and whatever. And I think that the people who do these sorts of things, you know, they don't do it lightly. They've done their research. They're making a gamble, and they hope it succeeds. And it's not us to sit and second guess them. I think it's our job to see the advantages of making the pie bigger for the district and for all the other taxpayers in the county. I'm glad to see so many of the county legislators here because in these difficult times we're all in same situations, and we need to work together more than we have in the past, and I hope that we will going forward. And I'm glad to hear the comments about getting some representation.
Other comments from the board? Anything, Sean, Seth? Frank, Judy, go ahead.
Can I? Oh, I just wanted to try to address Judith's question, but I'll wait for you to.
No, I would like to hear.
As chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee and the youth group, the youth board, youth agencies come under my committee. The City Youth Bureau is going to take, now we haven't fully analyzed the latest revision of the state budget that came out over the weekend. But under the previous one, the City Youth Bureau was going to take a whack of about $47,000. Judy, I can't stand here and tell you, we haven't collected nickel one on the Arrowhead project. The chances are none of that tax, sales tax or property tax, is even going to be for real. Hopefully, Eric, you have to help me with this, till maybe 2012, maybe. And it's probably going to be instrumental anyway. The youth programs that come through my committee are substantial. They're taking a hit, and you've heard Joe speak about it and Jim speak about it already. The entire hit to just the human service area through my committee is $1.3 million. We have to absorb that cut by July of this year in our 2011 county budget, because the state budget, no surprise to you, is a different fiscal year. Some of it is retroactive to 2010. We don't know what that number is yet because we haven't fully analyzed what came out over the weekend. We know it's going to be less because they've restored some of the human service programs. I can't stand here and promise you, and Mr. Harris, I can't stand here and promise you that we're going to restore all of the youth money. We have other programs that are taking a hit as well. I don't know what the percentage will be. Will I work my tail off? You know what party I'm registered in, and you also know that I take a lot of heat from my own party because I'm an advocate for the human service programs. Guess what? Am I going to be an advocate for this? You're darn right I am. I'll do what I can, but could I stand here and promise you that we're going to restore all those programs? I can't promise you that. We'll do the best we can, but we have to use it in the same context. We have public safety that's taken a hit. And remember, Joe has been pretty eloquent about the mandates from the state. 88% of these 9 state programs that were mandated to hit, those are things we have to pay for, like it or not. That leaves us 12% to pay for public safety, roads, and everything else that we have discretion over. That's where your programs fall into. So it's going to be a mix and match. I don't want to go on and on, but I'll do the best I can.
But my concern, as I sit here, as a former teacher, as a board member, are children.
Of course.
I didn't hear it. That's, you know.
No, we talked about that. What didn't you hear, Judy?
I didn't hear about you. I didn't hear.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
I don't want to go back
All
and
right.
forth this night.
let's, Martha, you want to respond to Judy? We'll keep it at that.
And
Judy
maybe Eric
first.
has something to say about the stores.
I just said something that Frank said when the taxes would start. You know, if we can get through this tonight, tomorrow I'm down at J.C. Smith ordering my silk fence. You know, to place the order to get on the property. So if we open this year, so starting next year, it's fully taxable the entire year, everything.
I'll be there to pick that check up.
Just quickly, Martha, go
Okay,
ahead.
my first job was as a teacher at East Hill School in early childhood education. So my heart bleeds for you. We're all facing this moving train of a property tax cap, and just because it wasn't in the budget deal in Albany right now doesn't mean it's not coming. We're confident that it's coming. It's going to hit us in this current year as we start to think of 2012. So I would love to be able to promise you we can put money here, there, or wherever. You have no idea. We have no idea how bad it's going to be.
Well,
and we can't. So, but I will tell you that the governor did negotiate to put a couple $100 million back in. I was glad it's going back to schools, even though counties are taking a huge hit. Honestly, that's my first priority. I agree with all of you about that. I have to say, I think that this is, you know, there are so many ways that we've tried to say that this is an important project, that we need your support. We would have needed you to vote for it, whether this was in August when you first heard about the project, or November or December, because the school district has the largest portion of the property taxes. The idea of a disproportionate distribution of the property taxes, as has been suggested here, has never been done in any IDA in the country. And I think there's a reason for that. It really then would create a huge political battle over every single IDA project that we would look at, you know, from now on. And I think, I'd like to think of us as a united community that's really trying to look out for each other, as Josh said. And I think trying to, you know, hold out for a better deal for a particular jurisdiction will split us wildly apart. It would end this project. We'd have vacant land there for the foreseeable future. So,
Martha, in all fairness, and I have to say this because Brad's not here, that was an 11th hour thought. I think after we discussed it, we realized for a lot of reasons it might not be tenable and it might not be feasible. Two different things. But that only enforces my earlier point, that we could have been far more creative, right? That we could have been able to sit here collectively around the table and say, without any hesitation, this is the best deal that we could have negotiated for the children of this district.
well, right now, with no cost to you, this is going to bring 1.3 million that you wouldn't have over 15 years. It's going to double your taxes on that property immediately.
And Martha, you said just a few sentences ago the real crux of the issue and the problem here is that you know, the school district is giving up the largest portion of the taxes. We have 64% of the property taxes, and we are being asked to divert those taxes to another entity. That's been the issue all along, and then to not have the largest property tax receiver involved in the discussions all along was the big issue, and that was a big problem. That's why we're still sitting here tonight. Be that as it may, this is not what we really want to spend our time on. Our time is spent on program for youth and program for the community, and where we're going to go with our budgets. But the issue is that this is the third year in a row that we are getting a cut in state aid. And I'm not sure in the 90s that ever happened, or the 80s, or the so this is the world we live in, and we receive state aid, and we receive local property taxes to fund the programming that we do in this district. We've received tremendous support from the community for what we do in this district. My big problem is, and what I pointed out to everyone last week, is this to me is this is jobs. It's really hard to pay your property taxes if you don't, A, can't buy a house, B, can't afford to pay your mortgage and the property taxes. Can't do it without a job. So for me, it's really come down to creating jobs in the community. The largest public entities in this community, Cornell and certainly ICSD, over the last 3-4 years, we've been reducing our workforce. That's come down from the state. This is what you have to do. We expect you to be more efficient in our hiring and our programming, and to do more with less. And when we're told to do more with less, Lavelle, that is, when we're talking programming, we're really talking people in the classroom. We're talking people, and how do we meet those needs? And we meet it through state aid and local tax revenue. State aid's going down, so we have to sustain our property tax base. So for me, it's, I really don't think 15-year time horizons. I'm really thinking 5. The next 5 years, yeah, I think there's going to be greater economic activity. There's going to be more jobs created. I also have a problem with just dealing with the issues on the board. We have a one-block, the school district owns a one-block area downtown, and we are dealing with another entity that really doesn't have anything to do with that block, and trying to tell us what we can do with that block. So that bothers me a lot, and we had to go to court. I'm sorry, we had to go to court to deal with the school district buildings on our lot to in whatever way we see best as a board for this community. So yeah, I have another problem with a private landowner, a person who wants to take some risk. Go ahead, and if he's going to build it, and if BJ's works, it's going to be great. If it doesn't work, well, he built a building that he's going to have to find another use for. But I have a problem with public entities telling private landowners, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that. So, I certainly support this. I'm not happy with this process at all. I'm not happy spending time tonight. Always happy to see the Board of Reps at our meetings, but that doesn't happen very often. So we probably ought to do this in a different way. I think we're being asked to...
Why don't you come to one of our meetings?
Well, your meetings aren't nearly as fun and exciting as mine. But Frank, I did notice that you were way off to one side by yourself. So, and I know right now
I'm on the extreme left.
you're on my right, baby. You're on my right. So I know why you're all alone over there, but there has to be greater collaboration, cooperation between all the entities in this community that deal with youth, deal with tax revenues, deal with what we do. So, I think if we vote no on this, this is going to kind of put a knife in all those relationships that I think we're trying to build. We're trying to go in a different area, a different way of doing what we do. So we're going to have to collaborate with the Youth Bureau. I mean, we've done that in the past, but how are we going to meet the needs of all the kids? How are we going to meet the needs of the pre-K kids and the K kids and the elementary school kids and the middle and the high school? How are we going to meet all the needs of all the kids in the community? How are we going to do that in the best way? And, I'm not sure spending any more time on a PIF, which I didn't know about until probably August, is the way to do it. I would prefer that we go ahead and vote on this. Brad is not here, so we need 5 votes. We are a 9-member board, and we need 5 votes. So that's fine. No. Oh no, this is Lavelle is really clear. So I really would like to get on to. We have other propositions that we have to deal with, but other comments from.
Sounded like you were calling the question.
I'm just had to weigh in eventually. So we're we will go ahead and vote on this now.
I'll call the question.
So all in favor of the proposition as it reads, raise your hand. So Judy, Rob, Jay, and Josh. Those opposed? That would be Seth. Abstentions? So we have 2 abstentions. So it doesn't pass. So that's where we are. So we will move on. And I'm not sure where we go with the PIF from here. So that doesn't pass, so on, and I wish I had more water. No, we're good. Jay, the nomination for the rep to serve.
We need to table that.
So we're gonna, do we still have time to table it?
We'll take whenever we want.
Okay.
It perhaps will not happen, it will not happen immediately.
Okay.
Suppose it will happen later.
So we are working on a rep for the BOCES board. We may have a name coming up. So let's go on to item C. We'll table that for a bit. And on to number C. And which one is this, Lavelle? This is the resolution of the board.
Hold the elections. Hold the elections.
Hold the elections.
These are a little bit different order than but I don't know that matters.
The actual resolution,
We need to break them out. They need to stand on their own, don't they?
No, each resolution is separate.
They're all separate.
It's enough to be ABC? Okay.
Yeah, and we've had embedded multiple.
All right.
So, I mean, is there anything that we need to discuss? Anything that is just to inform us? Yeah. Okay.
It's just be item C, correct?
Yeah, I'm moving item C. Anybody want a second?
Second, Judy will second. All right. Are we good? All in favor? That's everyone. And Doreen, there was item D, correct? And this just sets.
Publication to be announced
Well, okay. Well, the election will be in the election sites, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We have it? Judy moved, second. Jay, all in favor? Everyone, including Ellen. So we're good on all this, right? That all makes sense? Good, that was all, right? Is that it? Okay. And Doreen, you have everything you need for those propositions, resolutions, right? And we're all within timelines. Good. So on to our budget.
I'm going to turn it over to Margaret. You have a couple of things you want to put on the board and then we'll open it up for discussion.
I got it. You should have 2 separate documents in front of you. One is the slides that we'll be discussing, and the other is a draft of the budget presentation.
Rob, now.
Thanks.
we all set? Okay. What I thought I would do is try to give you a pictorial view. I've learned from my associates that there are differentiated learning styles, so that's what and much of what the numbers you will see in this document as well. There's line by line detail of the budget expenditure, but I wanted to take a few minutes for everybody to see how our expenditures break down and then how our revenues break down. And the first one is a simple pie chart. I think everyone's seen that before. It typically appears in our budget documents. But what I hadn't seen before and I thought might be helpful is to first know what I'm doing. Is to show what's called the three-part budget. You have seen that before in your documents, and there is a detail of it in this other copy. But I want to show you pictorially what we're spending our monies on as far as the instructional portion of the budget, the administration portion, and the capital component, and what those actually mean. The program budget, I think most people can get. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where we're closest to students, and that's where you would want to see the largest percentage of your dollars being spent. But also, you have to know that it takes other things to operate an institution. The other things being the administrative component, which is the district and instructional administration. It's our cost for administrative services at BOCES. It's the business office costs. It's many different ancillary services that it takes to operate the organizations. And then in the capital component, and this, just so you know, if you're wondering why is it broken down this way, probably now 10 years ago, the state, when they settled a budget at about this time of the year, decided to break the budget down this way so that people could relate to it, so there'd be some kind of sense to it. And it was dictated by the state education department exactly what fits in what area of the budget, and that's why you'll see in this document, you'll see it broken down, and you'll wonder if I made this stuff up. Well, I couldn't begin to make it up the way it's been outlined for us. But again, the capital component is our operations and maintenance, it's our debt service. Those are the two big ones in that area. So that gives you an idea of what that looks like. Then I thought it might be helpful to see how does it compare year to year? What does it look like from one year to the next? And this is just a simple by the numbers for learners like me that like numbers. It's a cold hard fact. And you know, year over year, although we aren't increasing much in any place, it is increasing where you'd want it to increase in the area of instruction, the program component of the budget. The other two are really, you know, they're going up basically. And just so you know, in the administrative component, program component, capital component, this is the only place where budgets have to take all the benefits of the people in those areas and bring that in too. So what you're seeing in those different areas is anybody that's out of the any personnel in the administrative component, these numbers represent their benefits as well, anything associated with these people. So this gives you a by the numbers look at year over year. The next one is revenue. And as you have probably heard this week, and the legislators alluded to it, there is a state budget in principle. And basically what that means is that the sides have come together. They have an agreement, and now they're in dark rooms behind closed doors trying to work out the detail. The budget hasn't been adopted yet, so I was honestly hoping that we would be able to come tonight and say, yippee, we have some more money. Now, there has been $282 million devoted to education, which I think is really surprising. I did not expect to see that happen. I really thought it was going to that the governor's hard line was gonna hold. And then there's this, which I find intriguing, is the $500 million in 2 grant-type scenarios that they have to work out the details on, that all districts are gonna be encouraged to apply for. And those are gonna be, basically, they're competitive grants based on excellence. He to his credit, the governor has decided that he really wants to see districts that are excelling, districts that are doing the right things, working hard, have opportunities to go after this money if they've got specific programs. And I think this district is well poised to go after some of those dollars as soon as they work out the details. And I don't know how long that's going to take. But I do expect we'll see our state aid runs within the next couple of days. I think this governor and legislature is pretty committed to wanting to meet tomorrow night's deadline. So stay tuned. I think we'll hear something. But as you can see, for us, our state aid, and I think I've got another slide here that might help some. Our state aid, well, it was a decrease. We actually saw, I think, a $78,000 increase only because our building aid went up so much because debt service went up more this year. So if you take building aid away, we did have a reduction in state aid like every other district around that I know of. I haven't heard anyone quietly saying they got an increase in state aid other than building aid. So you can see here, these are our major areas of our revenue. The property tax makes up the largest share. Because believe it or not, and I know no one in this room is going to believe it, this district is wealthier than most around here, from a property wealth and income wealth basis. So when we see state aid reductions, it doesn't hurt this district quite as much, but it still hurts because any time you're not seeing a steady increase, it's going to hurt. So again, and you'll see it on another slide.
Margaret, reserves, 1.5%.
Makes up 1.5% of the entire revenue package, but you're going to see.
Well, I see 1.5 million or so.
Right.
Is that in it? I thought we were using. Well, I guess you have to define which reserves those are that you're talking about.
Right. This does not include debt service. In this case, is in other revenue because of where we have to classify it. But debt service is another amount of money that makes up part of that. This is the other reserves, and we do have. I'll show you that as we go on.
It's somewhat misleading.
Pardon me? Yeah.
I know you're trying to follow a certain format.
The other slide's going to get much more granular.
Right. Right. And here, again, is by the numbers year over year. And you'll see, to your point, Rob, where the reserves are, we are taking 66% more than we did in the current year in these reserves. But honestly, that's what they're there for. That's what this board has saved for, to help smooth out situations like this. And I'm sure you've all heard in other districts, the talk, everybody that has reserves, that was wise enough to fund reserves, is able to use them this year to help and really make a difference. So, and again, you'll see that that's where the revenue is coming in. And with the other miscellaneous revenue, that's going up to 5.5%, but that's where that transfer from the debt service is coming in. So really, other than that, the tax levy is the only other place that's going up. So, all right, this one is this shows the staffing, and I think Dr. Brown may have shown this one last week or 2 weeks ago. This represents, just so everyone knows, this is not simply those people who are funded by the general fund. This represents, I think it adds to about 1,220 staff members. It represents those that are paid from the general fund, grant funds, school lunch fund. So it gives you an idea of where everybody's at. Now, this I hope helps you some with the reserves. This is showing the reserves we have, and in the column for the first column in yellow is what is expected to be there at the end of June. The next column where it says designated 211, 212 budget is what we are taking out and makes up those other numbers we just saw. So we are taking a significant amount of money out of our reserves. And the other one there that doesn't show as revenue in any of the general fund is the 2010 capital reserve. That's the amount of money that the voters will be asked on Proposition 2 to approve to purchase buses. You may recall in the current year, it's the first year we took the funding of all of our buses out of the general fund and are funding them out of the capital reserve fund pending voter authorization. We cannot spend money from there without voter authorization. So you'll see that money coming out. And then the debt service fund is, we're taking $1.3 million out of that fund to help offset that increased debt service payment I mentioned earlier. We're paying the highest amount this year, and then we're gonna start seeing it go down slightly year to year after that. So it was, we felt it was important to try to match the transfer of the debt service money to when you're paying the largest amount of debt service. Now, those are the slides, but now I'd like you, yes.
So, I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the reserves that are $1,550,000.
Yes.
So in your little column that, can you give me the numbers that add up to that?
It should be the liability reserve, the retirement contribution, and reserve for insurance.
Jay, where
What's
you
that
point to,
at?
if you could tell me?
She shows, we're gonna use reserves, $1,550,000.
Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, this was, I'm sorry, this was an older sheet. There's, I believe it's out of the retirement contribution, that should have gone up more. I apologize.
What?
Let me see if I got it in here. But I know we did increase it, tape coming out of there.
If you can find it, that'd be great. We'll write it in.
Okay, it should be 1.3.
Right.
It is on your document. It's on page 16 of your document here, where it says revenue. I'm sorry.
Okay, good. So I want to write it on here, Margaret. Where am I going to write that? Retirement
Where,
contribution?
yeah, where it says retirement contribution,
not
instead of
780.
780, it should be 1.2 million.
1.3.
And then the 200 and the 50 come up to the one, I'm sorry.
All right, so we have $1,300,000 there?
Did I? Yes. And again, the reasoning behind that, I know this was the original, the reasoning behind that was because of the spike in contribution, employer contribution from the retirement to the retirement systems, both employees' retirement and teachers' retirement. For this year, it was felt that that reserve would be able to help mitigate that.
That's great. Thanks for the correction.
No, thank you.
Yep. It's just important. You'll hear a lot of other school districts and whatnot, rightfully so, talk about the amount of money that they're spending out of reserves. And we are as well.
Yes.
And we're spending substantial amounts of money. And so I get a little concerned that a number, you have a reason, and I know why, and I understand why, but you have this $1,550,000 there. And that is not really, I mean, in one scenario, it is not what we're spending out of reserves.
It's not the total.
It is not, no.
You're saying it's more?
It's.
Well, sure, that number, right, that number does not count the 2010 capital reserve.
Or the debt
that we're
service.
using.
Right.
Or the debt service.
But, right, the debt service is
Right.
in.
So you have to really add that in to get a full picture of how we're using reserves this year and going
To help to
forward.
level out.
Right. I mean, that was part of the plan, basically.
Absolutely.
And really, the 2010 capital reserve, as everyone should know, was the next generation of the 05 and the 08. So we've used reserves out of the capital reserve fund of 05 over a period of years. 08 also had reserves, so we had two different funds that we're using resources out of for different things. So we created a 2010 capital reserve that had broader language, The 2005 was more restrictive, so the 2010 has broader language that yes, we can buy buses if we wish, or we can meet other needs within that capital reserve if the community agrees to it. And so those funds were all rolled into the 2010 reserve. And then theoretically, we will be buying buses out of that capital reserve over the next probably 4 budget cycles. Certainly, I think Finance Committee would probably recommend that at some point in the future, we start rationing back the amount of buses that or in vehicles, it's not just buses, but vehicles that we're going to ask that we buy. These are capital costs that last at least 10 years. We use them for 10 years buses, and when the trucks, they've been running around a long time. So they don't owe anybody anything at this point. So going forward, so when we're talking about using reserves, how are you able to maintain those reserves over time? And that's something that we've looked at in finance, certainly in talking to Margaret and Dr. Brown. Where are we this year? Are we going to be able to add some to those reserves? How are we, on our fund balance for this year? Are we containing costs this year? So at the end of the day, come July 1st, Margaret and your team, Angela, et cetera, will be able to get a pretty good idea of where did we end up this year, and then that will allow us to have a pretty good idea of what our reserve and fund balances will be for that next budget cycle. So.
And I think that was well put, and I think it's important to keep that constantly in mind, so that we are able to keep funding these reserves, so that, because this isn't, as someone here pointed out, this is not a one-year issue.
Right.
It's a multi-year issue.
Right, and so that was my one concern about showing the 1.55 million in using reserves this year, when in fact we're really using around
$3,919,000.
really using around
close to $4 million.
That's right.
3 or so, and we're looking at this year. We hope that we're able to add back 2 to 3 million. I mean, we'll find out more when we get at the end of the year. So we're going to use some, we're going to add back some, and keep things rolling. And questions, just trying to explain. Go ahead, Judy.
As a conservative money person, the 4 million scares me. And I know that we had certain questions come through the budget hearings and stuff about how wise is it to use that much of our reserves. So I need to be reassured, and you can do that later, good.
Well, I think it's
Now's
important that everybody, yeah.
Now's a good time, Judy.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing here. So.
Exactly. And you should be asking that question. And I think, as Rob said, at the end of this year, we need to analyze, and I think one of the things we did shortly after Dr. Brown got here was institute a vacancy control. Well, that's going to save some funds, and from those funds at the end of the year, we go through the analysis and then are able to start, to refund those. But it's important to keep doing that. And that's.
Do we have a goal as to what percentage per year? I don't mean as a very specific hardline goal, but as to what percentage. I know I'm one that wants to be the maximum, but
And
not everybody does.
that's where we are.
Yeah, the goal, the only legislated goal or cap is on your undesignated fund balance.
Okay.
And that's 4%, and that's where this district's been historically. I went back for a long time, and that's where they have been.
Okay.
So I can see where management of the reserves is something that engages some folks. Doesn't engage me. But I think to Jay's point, I think that it'll be good when we put together the companion piece that goes to the world about our budget. I think folks want to know how much of our savings are we using in one quick answer, boom, at just about $4 million. Rather than having, I know we need to report it in this way, it's a state mandate. But certain other folks will often point to how much money is the district actually sitting on? Do they have actually saved? I've heard that comment made, right? So the question is, and how much are you actually spending out this year? Are you just sitting on a pile of money, right? And I think that's going to be a useful thing for folks to know. Look, we're spending 3.9 million out of our savings this year in order to meet our goals for this year. That's probably the general public doesn't really want to know the ins and outs of fund management, although it's great that we do. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's not important for us as a board to know, but I venture to guess that the public really wants to know. So in this year, how much is coming out of your savings, guys?
I would point out that use of the reserves and fund balance is allowing us to provide a lot of the programming that's our focus, and that's why it's important to at least have a basic understanding of these.
No, and I'm working to get that. I'm just saying as we also do that, as we keep an eye toward that companion piece that we're talking about.
And the point, right, and Josh, the point should be made when we are creating these companion pieces. You know, these are not static numbers, and so you know this is always a reviewable work in motion, right? So we go through the year getting estimates all the time about where we stand as far as our expenditures go and the revenues. We did that a lot last year when we kept getting hit with state aid mid-year cuts, the threats of that all year round, all year long, basically. And so that's why, you know, this is a year-long budget analysis, because we're looking at where we ended up the year in July, looking at the audit in August as we step into the year, and then you're really looking at creating that budget. Starting, Dr. Brown, you know, the way that we hope to build budgets in the future, early and have this basically at this point, and we are basically at that point of where do we think we're going to be for that next year.
So one soundbite, the management of our reserve funds has allowed us to be in the situation we are right now, where we don't have to go to tier 2. The same folks who manage that reserve fund are also recommending we go forward in this way. So there's that level of trust again, and we're confident and comfortable that we have monies in our reserve fund, that we'll have additional monies to help us buffer some fall next year, which we anticipate as well.
I just want to add, really briefly, in addition to allowing us to avoid some of the draconian cuts, there's another reason why we want to actually keep money on the books, right? Because it makes us more attractive when we go out and try to do things to help the district. That's what something like in our personal finances, right? That people look at you and they can see that you are a balanced manager of your funds and you're not running extremely thin. That actually can be very beneficial, which we found when we've gone out to try to do some things that have actually brought money to the district by spending money, because we look good on paper. So if you're asking us to communicate to the public how much we're spending on the savings, there's another component to that. Why Granddad needs to keep some money in the nest egg.
No, exactly right. No, all I'm saying is that I think folks want to know just that large number rather than, well, some of it came from here and some of it came from there and some of it came from the other. No, I understand it's a moving target. I get all that. And that we're presenting a picture at a moment in time. But
right, exactly.
Okay. Now, in this document, this was that's the last slide. But I do want to call your attention to this the document that, again, it is draft, so it's the budget presentation report. It starts right out with, and I should have said this earlier, all the numbers you're seeing represent the Tier 1 adjustments, 2.9% tax levy. So just keep that in mind as you're going through it. The first 7 pages represent the general fund budget, you know, category by category as it's outlined again by the state. And you'll see if you breeze through those, you'll see the next 2 pages, the 3-part budget. Same categories starting with the Board of Education, but this shows you, again, year to year, broken down line by line, categorized the way we're told we have to do it.
My eyes are really Oh, sorry, did I say that? Oh, no.
I
I
understand.
didn't, oh, just a comment.
I might say page 10, I think, is and just by the way, these are the items that will be in the document that has to be in all of our buildings. It's the required items that you have to put in this document.
Right.
And I just want to make sure everyone understands what you're looking at. So on page 10, this is a calculation that we have to do every year. It's actually two separate calculations.
Right.
The first one is the administrative budget cap. This only comes into play if, and it won't happen here, there's a defeated budget. If you have to put it back, it's not going to happen. We have to calculate what the administrative cap is, and it's generated by using last year's numbers over this year's numbers, and what percent was the administrative portion of the budget this year compared to last year. And this is something that we have to calculate and have to publish.
Sorry, Margaret, Judy's trying to give me glasses, and I'm rejecting all attempts.
Okay.
Go ahead, Margaret.
Be stubborn. Okay. And then the other item we have to do is calculate the contingency cap on the budget. Again, only comes into play in the remote possibility that the budget might.
Can you go through that, please? Were you going to go through that?
Yes, yes. This is calculated, it shows here. You have to take the CPI, which this year I believe was 1.4%. You get to use 104% of the CPI, which is another percent number. And I believe that came to 1.92 this year. So if the board adopts this budget with a 2.9% tax levy increase and the budget failed, we would have to remove another $633,651 out of it, and close to another percent. The contingency budget calculation for this year would be just over the 1.9% or tier 2 level of adjustments.
Right.
So that's a calculation we have to do every year, and again, that has to be put in this document so everybody knows what it is. That also has to appear on that 6-day budget notice that we have to send.
Yes.
Yeah, you made a comparison to the tier 2, but in fact, the cuts wouldn't be like the tier 2 took.
They would not necessarily, no, you're right.
They don't.
They're different, right, I'm just using numbers, yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
That's
Mhm.
not a,
Yeah.
And the contingency budget doesn't care about tiers 1, 2, or 3.
They don't.
No, I'm serious.
You're
It's,
right.
again, it is a dollar amount.
Yes,
And then
it's a
you're
dollar
given, that is a dollar amount that you use to manage your district for that year, correct?
And there are some things that you can't, you have to remove all equipment from the budget. There are certain things you have to do, and Jay, I think, is alluding to that. That it's not just go to tier 2 and you promote 3, that's not, yeah, that's not.
Would it mean no buses?
No, because that's a separate proposition.
Fantastic.
It would, well, we would be able to buy buses as long as the community supported it.
That's
So
right.
the proposition to do so.
Yep, absolutely.
It's not a given. Go ahead.
That's right.
And then the question is, I know this is not something we want to ever think this way, because once you start thinking optimistically, something's going to happen. What's that Murphy's Law, right? But the idea being, right, the state put in, or at least appears to be putting in $260 some odd million. We hope at some point in time some of that's going to trickle upstate, which means there may be some additional money. Very little, but I'm sure some additional money comes here. So in what ways do we anticipate that may having an impact in either what we do with our budget or the tax levy?
And that's the conversation I think the board would have at that time. I think that's a conversation you probably will have next
week.
Or the week after.
I'm good, I can wait.
Well, so, yeah, you raise a good point.
There was some thought that we'd have those numbers today, this
Yeah.
afternoon, but that never hit as far as I.
No, I checked before you came in here, you
Right.
maybe. And then you're gonna see some of the same graphs that this will be in this document that goes to the public, it goes out to public buildings.
Robert,
Go ahead, Sean.
An additional request, at some point in time, I know we go through this every year, but I think it'd be advisable and helpful to the public if we were to outline what a contingency budget would look like, what are the stipulations, my understanding there's some pretty strong handcuffing that takes place in what you can spend money on, but to not only just run through the tax levy increase or the possible total budget, but then how that would impact our programs. I think that'd be important for us to have a conversation about what a contingency budget would do in this community.
Yeah, and that, it's good that you say that, because I think that would be good in those frequently asked questions type thing, because that always comes up. And we do have to, when we do that 6-day budget notice, which this district typically has done on the back of your brochure, that outlines what a contingency budget looks like, and it breaks it down, but people don't look at that. So I think you're right, if we were to put it in a format that was just fast, I think that'd be good. And again, the next few pages are the revenue, just stated, with more details, showing you the 2 years, year over year. First, one thing I do on page 13, this shows in the revenue side the major increases. This year we didn't actually have decreases. And it's showing $78,000 increase in state aid, but again, remember that's a result of the additional building aid for debt service.
And, okay, I see, 013, got it, okay. That's R1 for those who are not looking at the other, other numbers.
Yes.
And these are fairly familiar
Right,
pages
I thought
from
these
the
were
past.
pretty, right, I thought these, they're good to look at, I think.
So you're not changing everything?
Not
then?
everything.
Okay, all right.
I'm trying to shake it up, but not.
Statement letters.
Yeah, exactly. There are some rules about that, you know. There are some rules. Margaret, can I just ask, you've put together budgets for small city districts before,
Yes,
right?
yes, I have.
Like, how many?
15.
Okay. Just the amount of information or how it's presented, or is, we know what we had in the past.
Yes.
That budget document.
Yes.
So we are not getting that. We are getting information in a little different way.
Yes.
And can you just
Compare.
well compare a little bit?
Sure.
What's the?
Sure.
This isn't as thick. There's not as much detail. But typically, the amount of information that you've provided to boards in the past, or the amount of information that we've requested, where are we on the scales here?
This document here, I think, serves a good purpose. It's more detailed than I've typically done, but, and, I'm just gonna say, I applaud this board for the questions you ask, the detail with which you do things. And getting this information, I think, helps. It can't hurt. I found the other document, though, to be very cumbersome, because I think people got lost, and I think it's, Josh, your idea of, try to keep it, give people what they need, but then it's a fine line. It's tough to know whether they're getting enough or not. But the idea, when we went through this, the idea was to try to provide you with all the information that you need, but not so much that you just can't get through. And I would say, again, this is quite a bit more than what I'm used to, but it's definitely good information.
So you're being patient with us as we ask questions in a variety of forms, finance, etc. Okay.
I really am.
And just one more question. Just the straight auditing requirements of our finances of what we do compared to now to 10 years ago, what's just...
It's 10 years ago, districts had one audit every year. That was the external audit, and that went way back. I mean, that's been going on for longer than I've been in business.
So what's happened over the last...
Okay, well, since some of you may not know this, and I'll fill you in later, but the Roslyn School District started us on our way. And many of you I know remember it. 2004 this district on Long Island, it was discovered that several of the employees of the district at the high level were creatively utilizing funds. And to the tune of about $10 million in that district. And right after that, and rightfully so, the state controller's office came up with what they called the 5-point plan, and it was very comprehensive. And I remember at that time, I was serving on the New York State Association of School Business Officials Board of Directors. And, you know, school officials would say, oh my goodness, and I said, no, wait, this is good. This is a good thing. Because that the public needed to have faith that other districts weren't doing it, that districts were being managed well. So part of the 5-point plan was you had to have an audit committee, which this board has. It's a very active and good. In fact, if you're not busy Thursday night, we're having a meeting. But it's a good active committee, and it does its job. The districts had to have an internal auditor that basically assesses risk. The districts had to continue their external auditor, but the new wrinkle was that every 3 to 5 years they were supposed to, you know, get either the partners are supposed to change within the organization, or districts can go out and do an RFP to see if they can get a different auditor. And then the real key to it was the state controller's office started going out to school districts, and by 2010 they had to have audited every school district in New York State. And they did that. They were very ambitious. They did a very good job. This district was no different than any other district. They were audited. And one of the first things I did before I even was hired, I asked to see your audit, because that's what you do. You want to know how well a district's being audited and being run. And it was a very good audit. And that's how it's changed, Rob.
Well,
And
I
I think
got
for the
lost around
better.
the second audit there, second point in the plan. How many audits do we get per year again?
We have an internal audit.
Good.
We have an external audit. And then this district seems to be on the radar for everything the state controller's office wants to
So
audit.
about 3 a year.
Well, no, since I've been here a year, we've had 3 from the
But
state controller's office. It's just.
They're focused. They're usually, those other ones
They
you're
are
speaking about
very
are focused.
focused,
They're not,
yes.
Versus the
as opposed to
one-
the whole big audit, right?
And just so the public understands, it's nothing this district's done wrong, it's just what after the second one, I said, all right, what's going on? Why us? And as it turns out, we're an anomaly in upstate New York.
Well, we are special, Margaret, come on.
Okay.
Every way.
Ithaca's special in upstate New
Yep.
York. And the auditors like to audit us because they can get a good idea. We're bigger than some of the districts around, and they can just get a good idea of what's going on. But I can say it's turned out very well. And I've never met an audit I didn't like.
Thank you, Margaret. I did, there was a little method to the exercise. I did want to point out to everyone, to the community, that, we, in all likelihood, in this budget process and going forward, and really in the past, going line by line through this budget document and digging into each expenditure or how it's reported, where that proposed dollar is to be spent is probably not, that's really not what we do. And we talked about the budget themes, we talk about direction, but this is not an audit. Our process isn't an audit. We have audits that do that, and we perform those functions throughout the year. So we have to have trust, obviously, in Margaret and Lavelle and Angela, and really the business process that that we really approve a dollar amount, and then we have we know that those dollars are going to the various programs. We have audits that tell us that those dollars are going to those programs, and how much do we spend, how much do we have left over. So that this is that's that part of that process. So if you don't see us going line by line, so I go blind over all these numbers in this room, that's probably not going to happen. We will always review these documents, and when we have questions about line items, and I'll ask about AIS summer school when we have a chance to get a clarification. But, you know, we will pick out areas and ask about them. We will ask, we will review in finance, review in budget committees, and discuss, you know, the budget as a whole. So I just wanted to make that point. I just wanted to clarify our auditing process and what is incumbent upon district personnel and board personnel, you know, regarding our fiduciary duty. And I'm going to stop talking, and I think Jay.
I have a very specific question here, Margaret. Can you help me to understand better in the book, way back, page R2, which is page 14 in the handwritten. So you've got the federal restoration gap elimination adjustment, and those are, so it's just, you're on a revenue page, and you're putting some minus numbers in here.
Right. That's simply the way, when we get our state aid runs, this is just how they list it.
Well, it's not at all.
Pardon me? But I think what's important there is to keep in mind, if the formulas had run and they hadn't had to take money back for the state and federal government purposes, then those monies would have been due us. You see what I mean? And that's, again, that's when the state gives you your state aid runs, they list them this way, and they actually list that number. And actually, when we report our revenue at the end of the year, we have to list it that. We have to show what that adjustment was.
Yeah, am I the only one who doesn't quite follow that?
No. Who gets that money? The state gets that money?
Well, they didn't have it to give, you see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They didn't have it to give, so they have to show that had the revenue, had the formulas run the way they normally would in better years,
okay,
that number wouldn't have been a minus. They would have had the
But
money.
these numbers, you know, Margaret, they're part of the math that gets down to the 24 million.
Correct.
Well, first off, are you showing these numbers because there's a requirement to do so? Or
Yes, well,
at some point it will be? Or it is now? Or?
it is now. We have to show that number. I mean, we have to show it on our end-of-year reporting. So, like, what was budgeted as revenue last year, and I think you might remember, when I first came here, Judy was showing you that number, that 3.2 million, you know, as a loss of 8. So we have to actually show that. As it doesn't, Jay, I agree with you, it doesn't make sense, but it's the way we have to do it to balance up our revenues at the end of the year.
but I think it
Can I
does
ask
make sense.
Can I ask it maybe differently?
Sure.
Jay, I guess the way, if you add up all these columns, including that take back, that's where you come to the 24.
Right.
Correct.
So I'm trying to figure out where this 4.5 million take back is coming from.
It is.
It's coming
But you're showing it up in the other columns, so you're showing it somewhere up in the other columns.
if, maybe I can, if the formulas had been let to run and they had the money to fund it, that $16 million figure
Yes.
would be higher by that amount. But they didn't have the money, so they have to show you initially that you had it and then take it back.
Can I try to say it another way? What confused me first is it starts with federal. If you remember,
Right.
the state jacked us.
Thank you,
The state
yes.
money that had previously hypothetically been earmarked to us to get these cells out of a hole. So from that perspective, if I don't look at the first two words there, federal restoration, I actually get why it's on the revenue statement.
Yeah.
Because we had anticipated it, and we had had some conversations based on its hypothetical.
I'm with you.
possibility.
I would like to know where this breakdown, this money comes from, because if I add all these numbers here, I come up to a number that's 4.5 higher than this number here.
Correct, so.
So I want to say,
it
is it 2 million out of the 16 and then another
No,
million
it's out of the foundation aid.
Fantastic.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the others are expense-driven aids.
Helpful.
Activity driven, right.
You could almost then put that right below perhaps you can't change it, but you could almost make it a minus out of the foundation aid right below it.
I can still, yeah, I can switch that line and put it, would that help?
That
Put it up
would
under the
tremendously
foundation aid?
clarify.
Yep, it would clarify.
And you can write state Jack does.
This I asked just started asking.
Yes. Okay, I'll change it, yeah, I see what you mean.
Anything else you want to point out?
Just the last page, 18, 19, 20, through the end. I just want to give you a brief explanation, and maybe, maybe some of you understand it anyway. These are,
Really small
again,
print.
these are required documents that have to be made public. And because, it says sample because the forms for this year are, although they said they were going to be available last Friday, are not yet. So before this goes out to the buildings and everywhere we need to put it, the current year information will be there. That's the same with the next, the page 19. When the board adopts the budget, I have to go online and complete this information. I have to send it in, copy it off, and put it in this book. Page 20 is current information. That was just made available last week. I'm pleased to report that it isn't $20,000. The total expenditures per pupil this district is $18,223. Yeah, it runs behind that. This is the most current information. It's insane, but this is the most current information that is available. And again, this just came out last week.
And there are comparables there, right?
Similar district group is 17,709, and total of all school districts in New York State is 19,381.
Okay.
Now that's the state calculated per pupil expenditure, right?
Correct.
Quick question, Margaret, about the similar, is that based on number of student, wealth, distribution between taxes and aid, what's the?
It's interesting you say that.
Maybe
I
shouldn't say that.
Well, you know, I did go and look at what's considered a similar district group. And it was all over the place. There were small districts, rural districts, large suburban districts. And usually what they do is base it upon your resource capacity. One of the things that Josh has been talking about, you know, ability to pay and such. And what they do, they look at your property wealth, your income wealth, but then they also look at your free and reduced participation. And I'm not certain what the other factors are out there, but it's, you can go online, and actually, I was gonna try to print it out for you so you could see what it was, but they break it down, like DeWitt Middle School will be compared separately, then they compare the district, but it doesn't end up being the same other districts. It's very odd.
If you have people in our community who ask that question,
yes.
So if we think it's worthwhile, you guys might want to spend a minute trying to come up with a couple of bullet point narrative to help people with that.
I'm not sure if you're looking for yourself for information, but if you go to the New York State report cards and select the Ithaca City School District, it will give you a listing of comparative districts as well.
But that won't tell me why they're comparative.
It will begin to tell you why they're comparative. I'm just telling you, you gotta do a little work, but it will begin to tell you why.
Yeah, see, I tried that the other day.
Part of it is enrollment, part of it is resources, part of it is budget. It's a
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Some of the feedback we received through email and through the ad hoc budget committee was about this document, or the previous documents, and how convoluted they were and how hard they were to read. And we tried very hard to clean much of that up, but as you can see, there's some things that we won't be able to fix because they're required by law. And as a person who is very particular about packaging information in a way that's comprehensible, I'm struggling with this still. So we're going to continue to work at it, but some things I'm just going to say you won't be able to fix.
I don't think the expectation ever was to make the state sensible.
Yeah. Good.
Seriously, that was never it was never our intention to do that. The intention was to say we must put this piece out. Can we not put a 3 to 5 page piece in front of it that is sensible? That's it's a version of sensible, and you know it's a companion, not a replacement. That's the whole thing. And that's where the frequently asked questions piece comes. That's where I think there's this notion that how much are we spending out of reserves without having to plug it in here, and here. Somebody could go and do that math if they want, but That's the reason.
And some of the information we're posting online too is helping some folks. They're seeing that information is much more helpful even than the
Mr. Ains? Yep. We're just talking, right? This is a
Go ahead.
workshop or?
No, it is a workshop,
Yeah.
but, yeah, go ahead.
So, two things would help me in terms of cleaning up the document as well. I know this is a draft and that's fantastic, right? Is one is having some sort of consistent formatting throughout the document. I think will help give it some continuity, getting the title, getting the actual page numbers, so I don't see R6 and then page number. And then I'm wondering, I understand we're trying to save paper and be conscientious of both of our paper costs, just not being wasteful. But for some of these things, it'd be helpful if there was sort of section state mandated part. Like if you identify for constituents, this is the state mandated aspect we got to show to you, and maybe even a half a paragraph or something before some of these pages saying what you're about to see is blase, right? That there may be a way that's a cover page that's before some of the stuff, not a cover page, but something that precedes the pages. I understand that adds pages to the document, but if we're trying to make this digestible for folks, including board members, then I think there's got to be ways in which we start explaining some of the things that we're doing as we're showing it and giving it to people.
To that point, and this is where an asterisk might actually come in handy. Would it be possible to indicate for the public which areas in the document are state mandates in and of themselves? Right?
Financial state mandates, you mean?
Yes. Which subcomponents within here are we required by authorities greater than us to actually produce a result? That
So
makes
then-
sense?
Would an example be how we've broken out the pie chart by the different categories? We need to explain why.
I think the pie charts might really be too big because obviously teaching is not mandated, right?
Yeah, see, part of the problem might be that within an area, there might be some that are mandated and some that aren't.
If it's feasible, I don't
Let me
want
think, yeah.
to make you reinvent any wheels, but that is one of the questions
Right.
that comes up constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things that the community has a difficult time understanding, frankly, when we say these are unfunded mandates. If I say that to somebody, a lot of the time I get a blank stare. I'm sorry, I don't understand the words coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, let us work on that one, because I do think it's important.
Josh, let me know when the right time is, but when we've moved away from the document and want to get into public input piece, I have good stuff to read from the watchers from last week, and I wanted some questions about what we heard earlier. Whenever we're at that point.
Right, and just, go ahead, Jay.
A couple specific questions. There was some comments tonight about, and you can tell me that you'll address this later if you want, about the Caroline social worker. Am I correct that that would be a person that they were speaking about in Tier 3?
No, that was a Tier 1. That's what happened.
Can you, is it the
Social worker.
It's in the,
okay. Got it, it's on the bottom of the page. 1.5 social workers.
District-wide, yeah. That breaks down.
You mentioned one, your notes here is a .5 FT at BJM. 0.5 Northeast. And a .5 at Caroline. This is the mental, just reviewing here, the mental health support at Caroline will be provided by the remaining 1.5 social workers and a .6 psychologist. Is that?
That's correct. That's correct.
And the 1.5 social worker includes the one that's dedicated to
Dedicated to the ESP.
So that would leave a .5 social worker.
Yeah.
So that makes me ask the question, which I probably should know, but don't, is what do we have for staffing at the other elementary
I
schools?
think it's consistent.
Yeah, it varies from school to school, Jay. For example, you may have at South Hill a 1.0, at Fall Creek you have a 0.5 social worker. There's also variation in the psychologist FT per building. BJM is a little bit different from the other elementaries because they have a little bit more psychologist FT, 1.6, plus they have a 1.0 school counselor who also does a lot of counseling. And, you know, these decisions were made definitely in collaboration with the building principals in terms of what they felt that they could, what they needed in terms of mental health support.
And I would think that can change throughout the, so how do we, overall, sort of globally, big picture, how do we, anybody can answer this, how do we manage the psychologists and social workers that we have in the individual schools? Because it could vary, I mean, it could month to month and week to week.
By needing caseload, is how we're going about it.
And so does that mean that at the beginning of the year, it may look a lot different at another point in the year? And so do you look at, or who's in charge of ours?
All of us. You're
I don't know who, what's
Brandy, you can help, I'm gonna look over there.
And I'm looking at you, Dr. Brown.
The social workers under you?
Yes, they're under, they're obviously, they report to the building principal in the building that they're in, but yes, we oversee the reallocation of social workers and other mental health providers.
And historically, has it gone up, and does it, you know, is it state?
Jay, it really, overall, our FT, there has been variation certainly, but building by building, there has been some stability in some buildings more so than others. We really look at need, and we allocate, we look at it, Janet and I, as district-wide. We have to look at needs across the district, and we put our mental health providers in the buildings which require, based on need. How do we determine that need? In many ways, we look at the number of kids who receive what I call mandated counseling that is on IEPs, a special education service. We look at students that receive counseling or are recommended for counseling who don't have an IEP perhaps, but through our RTI process are deemed eligible for counseling or required counseling. We look at the number of evaluations that our mental health providers do. In the case of psychologists, the number of initial evaluations, re-evaluations. We look at the number of functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans that that have been developed and then need to be monitored. We look at the number of groups that our counselors may have created, for example, lunch groups or various kinds of counseling groups that in response to the needs in that particular building. We look at if that social worker, for example, pushes into classrooms to teach second step, or if they provide consultant support to the teacher so the teacher can teach, for example, second step. So there are many factors involved. It goes beyond just looking at IEP counseling needs. We look at many things and then we make determination. The difficulty now is we're still waiting for our pre-K to K transition meetings to take place. And so some of our projections are a little bit off. So we're going to, we look at these allocations now. We look at them at the end of June and then during the course of the summer. And then we make adjustments where the needs are.
Well, I gotta think, we have teachers in reserve to address if some sort of blip happens in a school that is unexpected, and so I gotta think that if these services have some sort of demand that wasn't planned, then we respond.
We do respond, and our first response will be reallocation. We look at what we have and how do we use what we have effectively. And when I say, and we just don't look at social workers, we look at the mental health team in that building. We look at the psychologist, we look at the social worker. In the case of BGM, it might be the school counselor. Certainly the secondary schools who have school counselors. So we look at the whole picture before we, determine, yes, we don't have enough overall FTE to meet our needs.
Thank you.
I want to stick here, but only as an example of a larger question that Jay raises. So a couple of weeks ago, Lavelle came to us with this document representing the best thinking of the group on the ground about what is feasible and not damaging given a fiscal reality. Now we've had some time to make sure this squares with reality. Because Caroline was the school that I was the liaison for, no, actually it wasn't, but because I spent some time there with Josh, I'm sensitive to the particular areas that we're talking about. And so help me walk through this as an example of how you walk through it. We have a new principal. We have a special program that we put up there. We've made the decision to put up there. And we have a group of children who were in effect, in particular at that school, rescued from basements and closets, effectively. How have we made the determination that this level of support will not necessitate our educational leader being in a position where he's running the classrooms restraining children? Right? How does this work out in particular for that school of all of them? I would have thought that school would be the one where we would not have withdrawn resources for reasons for which, the obvious reasons, but I don't want to go in that level of detail. So have there been considerations within this document for real on-the-ground exceptions? We know BJM does something special. It would be like pulling up a full-time FTE from Bell Sherman for ESL. Right? We've made the decisions that we're going to aggregate certain resources or certain programming in these buildings. So convince me this is going to work out.
Yeah, let me take this one. We talk about building capacity. One of the things that we will do, we're looking at restructuring how we do things for, and the program we're talking about, that psychologist or that social worker will stay with that program. We're not including that FTE in this process. Okay, it was written that way, but that's not how we're including it. What we're looking at is we're looking at how we use our psychologists. We're looking at more group work with our psychologists. We're looking at how we use our social worker with doing more group work. We're also building capacity within the program you're talking about with training on every week. The aides get trained. Once a month, the whole group gets trained. As is faculty, we've had trainings by the social workers and faculty, and we embed those in the training. We also have one-on-one congruencies with teachers, where the teacher gets background, gets training by our social worker. And I think if you come up to our building, I think it's a much different feel than it has in the past. There's a much different atmosphere, so it's not, as we speak, we talk about we respond, we don't react. The last possible choice is to restrain children. We've had to do that at some points, but just for safety reasons, but far fewer, and I think we can get some documentation of that through Leslie's office. I know that we send reports down. I believe that we have a lot lower incidents. I can't give you the numbers right now. But the capacity piece is the one, and the training and the understanding, and it's the whole faculty that's involved. It's not just.
So in this particular instance, you're saying the one-on-one relationship the social worker has with some of those children by necessity, or are you saying maybe it has not been by necessity because we can infuse some of that expertise within the actual classroom? I'm trying to follow this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, teachers are getting better information, better training. We're doing that through faculty meetings and one-on-one trainings as well. And and we're also working as a group, you know, our social workers and our psychologist and our nurse and one of our special ed teachers is our mental health group. So that's a PLC, that we work as a PLC, so we have more synergy and more, we rely on our talents a little bit better, and we're having some success.
All right, we'll use this as a test case.
And
If I understand that you are actually running in the classroom, I would pay attention.
Yeah, and you know, there are times where I have to go in the classroom. I'm the building principal. There are times I have to do that, but you know, we're building it on relationships, and I think we're developing strong relationships with children.
It's not a bad thing if Mr. McDonald shows up in the classroom to.
That's something we encourage. But you'll hear from him that this was I haven't said much. This is a conversation and a decision that's come about because of the collaboration between those two and us together. If there are needs that we need to address going forward, we will address them. We said that to the parents today. If we need to make adjustments, because we sold this first tier of the budget to you as if it would not be a detriment to children in our district, and we're going to stand by that. If we see that there are needs in any school related to any of these adjustments, we'll adjust again.
But this was just our first opportunity to dive into one, right? So that's why I was unwilling to vote last week, as Sam suggested, for a budget sight unseen, because we haven't had these conversations. I want to have more of these conversations. It's not that we don't trust our leadership, but trust and verify is a phrase that resonates.
James?
I became confused, and I received, we all got an email about the after-school the summer school program, and Leslie's here, and maybe she can review
I'm on
again.
Vicodin J still, so. And I was diagnosed with Tourette's, so.
Wow. Maybe another night.
Well, we'll ask somebody else. And I did bring it up before, but I was a little fuzzy on which year is what happens when, and
just to review that.
So which one of you want to take that one? Because we're talking more about the finances, and then we'll achieve some savings, or we're talking about when the actual program will run.
Yes, that's what
There was multiple questions when we talk about, you know, what's in place out of, you know, this year's budget for this summer of 2011. What does summer school look like then? And then we know, and Dr. Brown, you had mentioned about, you know, taking some time to get ramped up for 2012. And so what does 2011 look like, I guess, as we move toward 2012 and elimination of elementary and middle school AIS?
So I'm jumping in, Dr. Myers. At best, it'll be a scaled back version of what we do. But as far as numbers and funding, it would be best practice to do something this summer as a bit of a test or research and development to move forward. I'm hoping, and we've introduced some initial conversations around what that would look like. But to have the number of students and the amount of dollars this summer, that's not something we're proposing to do this year. But something in lieu of that is what we're hoping to do.
Go ahead.
I may be a little further confused. If my understanding is correct, there will be no AIS summer school this summer.
This summer.
So there's currently, as is, there's nothing scheduled for this summer.
Nothing for this.
And you're saying the possibility of doing something scaled down version for this summer still exists.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I think the email was right that the email that we all received was that there would not be something scheduled for this summer.
Right. I think we wanted clarity because our conversation the other day was unclear, and you know, for a lot of folks, okay, when does the fiscal year start and stop? And so when we're talking about the money that was used to pay for summer school in 2010, that was this year's budget, right? That was money. Yeah, that's this year.
And Mark, they want to jump in and help the board understand more about the finances and how we will achieve savings and how we will achieve savings going forward.
But our new budget year starts July 1st.
For this.
Right.
Right.
Next. Yes. Yeah. How do we get to the $135,000 savings?
Well, the program that's at BOCES is the one that we're referring to.
Yeah.
It won't be running next summer, from what I understand. So.
This summer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the summer of 2010, we spent $135,000 with a program that ran through BOCES.
Yes,
And that's what happened in 2010.
right,
2011, BOCES is not going to run that program.
correct.
So it's not that we're not participating, there's nothing to participate in. Is that?
No. They aren't in that program. We are
We are not participating.
providing the hunt, yeah.
We're not
Oh, I
we're not going, so they're not
We're
having.
not going. Well, I don't know.
I don't know if they are having it.
No, I was trying to get clear on, Margaret,
I'm sorry.
what was being said.
Yeah, no, I misunderstood what you were saying. No,
Okay.
we just aren't participating. I don't know if they're having it or not, but
Okay.
we are the biggest participants, so
Right,
they may
exactly.
not be.
Okay.
So there's an example, I think additional information may be somewhat useful. Number, students and quick profile of who we're talking about that participated last year.
Profile of the students?
I bet you,
Sure.
yeah, just curious.
And what happens to, I understand Dr. Brown rightfully wants to, I'm in full agreement that we should move whatever resources we put in the summer towards previewing, so students don't fall into gaps. But for students who won't have an opportunity this summer, it'd be really helpful to understand what there will be. Will the software system kick into play? What
Plato,
will we do with Plato? Is that it? I got pilot on the brain. What will we do with it? And what happens to them in the academic year next year?
And it's very premature, just know that it's gonna take us some time to flush that out. And it may take several weeks or a month or two for us to have some things in place to give you some definitive answers about what would happen even this summer. Definitely going forward as a larger scale plan, but we just haven't had the time to do that right now.
Just preliminarily, I can say that part of it will be addressed through the revision of some of the things that we've done around the different tiers for RTI. Another piece of this is that Lisa Harris, the director of AIS, has been working very diligently on embedding more than just credit recovery with Plato, but doing some skill building and assisting students while they're simultaneously in classes to help build those skills up. But I can certainly go into more detail.
How low does Plato go?
In our district, it's, how low does it go?
Great. How low can you go?
We're 6 through 12.
Okay.
This might be a good time to share what we heard from the folks who were watching last week, because we're hitting on some of those topics. So we heard appreciation and questions. From Martha Frummel, we heard appreciating that the budget proposals were done collectively, the education professionals put it together collectively, and Martha looks forward to that process growing and strengthening over the coming years. And as the volunteer arts booster president, she certainly appreciates the community's recognition that arts are valuable in student, academic, and social development. The Jane Addams Society appreciates Eldred in particular and his insightful observations.
Well, don't we all? I mean,
And,
but sorry, go ahead.
That they would like the board to be mindful of the knowledge that can be harnessed within our own teaching ranks. They are very worried about the loss of African American history at the high school, and they have a few questions. So I think similar to what we've just been hearing, some of them were addressed. You guys have all read it, but it's not yet up online. They would like to know what's the impact of each cut on the building. So the question here is details, details, details. There's the budget adjustments piece that explains it somewhat, but they appear to have more questions. We just talked about summer school was one of their questions, and y'all can read more of that. So that's what we heard from the budget watchers. I would note that something like 80-some folks watched online last week, but we don't have any count of the number of people who watched it on the usual cable TV, so I don't think that means that viewership was down. It just means, you know, that's when you watched online. That being said, I had a question also for folks, which was, did anything that you heard tonight around, well, we heard really about pre-K and the social worker. I think I understand the answer about the social worker, but did anything that you heard tonight say to the exec team that you might want to make some adjustments within your recommendation of tier 1, or do you want to go back, think about that a little differently, and then come back to us? I understand you're still recommending tier 1, but have you gotten any new information through emails, through the public's coming through what I was reading and so forth, that make you want to go back and look at it?
What I heard tonight and from emails, I'm even more support of our tier 1. We worked hard to protect our preschool program as much as we could. As you know, the adjustments to aides and paraprofessionals is in tier 2, and we warned against us not having the capacity to do that right now. And from some of the comments tonight, it's understandable. So that's why we haven't made that adjustment. And again, we've also tried to protect the full-day program. And something we'll look at going forward, but before we go to a half-day program to achieve some significant savings, we have to build up some capacity in other ways as well. So from what I'm hearing from folks, is that we are doing this in a thoughtful way around pre-K, for sure.
Other questions, Jay?
On the AIS summer school, almost $36,000. So if that was a BOCES program, we would get between 50 and 55% back in the next year. So has this been discounted?
This is the first year, so
If we don't do it next year, then it'll be the following year we don't get the aid. So what we spent this last year, we get an aid next year.
Right.
Because it lags a year.
I know.
You're asking if it's aidable, Jay?
Oh, I know it is.
It is.
That's why we did it.
Right.
That's why it's only been at BOCES 2 years, I think. Was as a cost savings, and so this large. I mean, I think our hope is that we're going to replace this with a better arrangement, and this is an adjustment. But
so the 135 is a one-time. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a one-time saving. Next year, the saving, if we were to do nothing, it would be close. It wouldn't be as. It won't be 135. I don't know what number it would be. But
that's right. It'd be about half.
One-time saving.
And there would be no extra revenue from BOCES.
Right, that would be the same.
That's why it won't be as much of a saving.
Yeah.
It's just important that we all keep in mind that when you're looking at BOCES programs, the savings is not always that dollar, and like if you look at transportation, likewise, it's not that dollar. And you
So in
spend
effect-
reserves, they're not there the next year, and all those kinds of things that we need to keep in mind going forward.
So in effect, it'll cost $70,000 to run the same program if you count the 70 coming back.
That's right.
Any other questions, comments right now? Is there anything else that we're going to touch base on tonight?
Not from our end.
Not from their end?
Again, I'd invite folks to come to tomorrow night's budget reform group meeting if you haven't had enough budget stuff. But honestly, I think one of the places, for example, that I take the question about what's the impact going to be on buildings, I'm thinking ahead to the road shows. That what'll be really useful is for somebody from the board to describe overall what the budget is and what the impact is, and with the building principal probably describe, okay, so what's this going to mean in our building going forward? But that's a discussion we'll have in some more detail tomorrow night.
It's critical. It's critical to help the general public understand the capacity building piece.
Right.
And that's really critical because it sounds scary. This is new and it's different, and I don't have to be convinced why we're doing it, but to the extent we can get that message across, this is why we did it, this is how it's going to affect the building, this is how we expect to recover, and these are the critical elements that we expect to, I don't want to say raise their game, because if I say that to a teacher they might stab me, but we need to have that conversation. Where does this work fall, and how are we at least going to attempt to get it done?
I would like to move that we go into exec session for the purposes of negotiation, to discuss negotiation.
Second.
Executive session? Okay. I'm
Sure.
good.
Don't we have to?
There's
Hang on
no,
to this?
no,
This
And
was-
to discuss
this was just a
it's just a budget workshop, and there's a motion to continue.
No, we were a special motion, we were a special voting.
Oh, no, I'm good. All the other things, we don't have to do. But we will do that, as long as we all vote to go into exec session, which, all in favor? That is everyone, and we will do that. We're gonna take a break for 5 minutes.